So now we will start with the panel discussion. I would like to invite Klemen, Jernej, Andraž and Simon to the stage. Bomo vzeli še. Čakaj.
Are you nervous?
Okay, so here with me I have Simon, who is Android developer at Kamino, then Andraž, he works at Sportradar, Jernej, PSPDFKit.
Exactly.
Yes. And in the end is Klemen, who is an Android developer at Bank. We have prepared some goodies bag for all of you who participate in this panel discussion. So the format is that I will ask some questions, they will try to answer them. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask them. And maybe we can start. So at first, let's start with some general questions, like what is the minimum SDK you are building your apps for?
Okay, so the minimum SDK we build is usually around 16. Well, that's for at least Slovenian market or similar, but last time we checked if we're making apps for the UK market, we can easily start with minimum SDK 19 or even maybe 21. So the next project we have for the UK will probably just stick with 19 and that's it. But for Slovenian clients, we'll maybe be on 16 for a bit longer and then hope to switch to at least 17.
Client asks for 4.3, but we usually drop it to and try to support from 4.0 if it's possible. Yeah, same as Simon said, we will be able to write it, but it doesn't make sense to support from 4.0 anymore.
Excellent.
Yeah, so we started out with supporting API 15, that's 4.0. Now officially we're ready to 16 because there was just too many bugs in some 4.0 devices. Even though our SDK will still run on 4.0, and that's mostly because we have a couple of large clients with a few 100,000 users on all devices, and they were kind of unhappy when we decided to change it. So for now, it still runs probably for half a year or so, but then we're moving on as well.
So surprisingly the same on my side, so level 16, and like Simon said, we had an app in the US, and I noticed we could easily switch to 19 or even higher. So yeah.
So nobody uses gingerbread.
No.
Bastards.
If you've seen AppCompat has just dropped Android 2.2 support.
Yeah.
So now, if you want to use AppCompat, you need to support Android Gingerbread for all of you out there still supporting API 8.
Okay, so next question. How do you handle 64K method limit? So do you use ProGuard, multidexing? Do you remove all the external libraries, or how do you handle this?
Well, first we obviously use ProGuard to strip out all the methods that aren't used. That's mostly in the libraries we depend on because they cover a huge set of cases. Maybe you only need 10% of that. So first we have that, and after that, when we hit the limit, we try to analyze where did all those methods come from. But usually that means that we install multidex support and go with that.
We try to be careful what the dependencies we include. If we still go over the limit, we use ProGuard as always, but then also enable multidex support.
Yeah, well, most of our code is in native code anyway, so we have total 20 or 22K methods. We do ProGuard stuff, but
Nothing much else besides that.
Yeah, so ProGuard is mandatory, and like if we hit over the 65, then we just analyze and try to remove it, and otherwise we use multi-text. But I've noticed that the build times are really much slower, so I try to remove it. Yeah.
Okay, what architecture do you use for your Android apps? So do you use MVP, MVVM, or something else? Or nothing at all?
We, on all of our projects, we actually use MVP, and we do that in combination with some other libraries, for example, RxJava. So it's a combination of those two, and that's basically because we always try to separate concerns within the different classes we have, and also because it helps us to test stuff easier. So another interesting thing is that we don't actually use fragments at all in our apps. So it's basically activities or layouts, that's it. And we, for now, we didn't find a case where we said, okay, we need to add a fragment here. So we're completely fragmentless.
That's really, really nice.
Yeah. No more annoying life cycle exceptions.
It's not so
stuff like
complicated, it just says like 17 methods or something like that.
Yeah, and there's fragment transactions and managers, child managers, state exceptions. Yeah, that was really annoying. We completely went away from that.
Just one more question. Do you retain state in your presenters?
Well, for the most apps, we actually only do portrait orientations because I guess that users are mostly, the kind of apps that we make are mostly make the most sense when being used as a portrait app. So we don't have to save instant state, but we still try to because I do think it's a good practice. So that's, we do that in our presenters. So that's the layer we try to do the most heavy lifting in.
On our older projects, we didn't use any special architecture, but on our next big project, we will use MVP and with clear architecture in mind.
Did that cause a lot of problems in your current project when you don't have any application architecture?
No, actually not. No. We just try to, when we see too much clutter around methods and so on, we try to refactor it and it's fine actually.
Excellent. Good now.
Yeah, so our use case is a bit different, so we don't have an actual MVP structure yet, but mostly what we do, it's like, as opposed to him, we actually provide a single fragment for our clients, which hosts a single view, and everything's built on top of that. And for that fragment, we also support retaining state or not retaining state, doing configuration changes or not doing configuration changes, and all of these transitions need to go smoothly, and we also have to retain state. So yeah, right now we have something that looks like MVP to actually keep that complexity in check, but pretty happy about the latest changes to Fragment API because they are just terrible.
Was it hard to achieve that architecture with Fragment?
I mean, honestly, not that much because our fragment only hosts like a single view and some utility views. So that view is completely custom and does everything manually. So there's a bit more code, but it's not all that hard. The most annoying part is actually testing all the possible configurations, which is currently like 40 or 50 different configurations, and the tests run for like 20 minutes. So that's the painful part.
So yeah, in my previous projects, I didn't really use any architecture, but I tried to avoid making activity in a God object. In our current project, we're using MVP. We're not having a retaining instance implemented, but it's a local database, so most of the stuff is available all the time. But I'm like, yeah, I mean, while implementing this MVP, I stumbled on like it's kind of I don't think it's really a silver bullet. Maybe it's like maybe a discussion for this kind of now, because I think like the current Android API really forces you to use their API. So if you want to go out of this, they're thinking out of these life cycles or like keeping context everywhere. Context. Then it's really hard to. I find it like really challenging. So maybe I would consider some other approaches too, besides the MVP. Because, for example, if you go on blogs, you find a lot of discussions how to retain an instance, how to implement presenters, where to put presenters. So it's like really still. I think it's a subjective decision how you're going to implement it. You can use some external libraries, but then again, you have like third-party libraries in your project. So yeah, that's my experience.
It's also worth noting that it kind of gets complicated in Android MNN because we've gotten things like asking for permissions and doing the multi-view and drag and drop. Is just a lot of things just started to rely on being handled via activity and on activity result, and that gets really annoying and complex really quickly right now. So I'm thinking that Google has a good solution right now on how to get that under control.
So you think that MVP in its current architecture would have to evolve in some way that it will be okay for MNN?
Not MVP, more Android. Because the biggest problem is that on activity result thing. It's like, this is the worst thing on how to communicate things between applications ever, and Android's starting to use it more and more.
Yeah.
So handling on that state is annoying. We found it to be the easiest to actually use RX wrappers. There's a pretty great RX permissions in some of these wrappers, but it's still essentially just presenters. It's really hard to handle presenters, retaining state of presenters, and activity lifecycle, activity like these unactivity result things, and keeping everything together. People have used loaders, but it's honestly until Google does something with the activity object, it's going to be annoying.
Okay, so let's start with some more controversial questions. You already said that you don't use fragments because they have stupid lifecycle.
Yeah.
Do you have maybe any more reason because why don't you use fragments, or is it just because of activity lifecycle?
Well, basically, the main pain point was the lifecycle, and because, as you know, fragments have a huge lifecycle callbacks. They have a lot of different callbacks, like 2 times as much as activity does. So basically, we just went with layouts because their lifecycle is much easier, and for the most cases, as I said, we didn't really miss fragments at all. So if we want to have some view that's similar in different activities or stuff like that, we try to encapsulate that as much as we can with their own, each view would have their own presenter and their own component for daggers and stuff like that. So that's really something that works for us, and if we have to, for example, know in a layout when some activity event happens, we just pass that either to the activity itself, so activity has an instance to the layout, or as a method like on resume, which is the totally our method, or we pass that through presenters, which have like references to child presenters. So basically what it was is we found out we don't really need fragments. So we then decided, okay, why would we use them? So we went with layouts and we never looked back.
Have you maybe tried Mortar from Square?
Well, we have our own stack for handling backstack and injections for views, and we try to evolve that as much as possible. So that's constantly evolving. It's not like our MVP is frozen. It's as we see some possible improvements, we try to make them, and we just evolve from project to project.
Okay, that's nice.
So,
what's your opinion about fragments, Andraž?
We are using them when it's needed. just try to avoid them with activities if it's possible, but sometimes it's hard to avoid them. For example, if you have the menu drawer and click it on, it's hard to start a new activity because the animation for closing the menu drawer would be nice.
Yeah.
So you have to use fragments or custom use, but we are afraid of those, like there are some, like you mentioned, third-party libraries like Motor, but they are so evolving really fast, the API is breaking, and so we are sticking with fragments. Actually, they work quite nice. I don't have problems with lifecycle, but you need to be careful when you commit the transactions, so you get the exception, state exception.
Yeah, and what's your opinion about fragments?
Yeah, well, we're actually providing a UI component, so it was a choice between using a fragment as a top-level element or a view. But the problem is we really need to hook into the onResume, onStop, onPause, these kind of lifecycle methods. And one way would be to provide a view and then demand from users to implement all those call throughs themselves, like Google Maps does. But the problems essentially are always the users. They keep forgetting things, and if they forget like one call or forget to implement onResume or onLow memory, things are going to act weirdly and they're not going to figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
So Fragment in this case was the easier solution. And really the big problem with Fragments is just that they're async. Like their life cycle doesn't really map to activity life cycle. And some things can just be called out of band when they're not attached. And that's just the only big really pain from the fragments. If they would be synchronized like iOS view controllers are, like if you would be guaranteed that onResume is always after activities onResume, or when you call commit, then the fragment is going to be committed immediately in the main thread, it would make it easier. And I've seen Google fix that, a lot of that by having the commit now in the newest support library, which basically fixes a lot of those annoyances already. But yeah, we kind of need to use the fragments because that's what our users know and it makes the most sense. I don't like it all that much, but we couldn't switch.
Klemen, what's your opinion about fragments?
Yeah, I used them a couple of years ago, and I had like a lot of problems with them, like especially the rotation changes and stuff. So I found out that I can like avoid them completely. So right now I don't use them anymore because like for all the view transitions, everything can be done with like custom view groups. But I noticed like there was a talk on Joyxon. They can be, for example, PayPal really studied their life cycle and they're using them, and it looks like if you're calling the right stuff in the right callbacks, they can really work for you. But at the moment, I don't see use case for them. Yeah, so that's my opinion.
I just wanted to ask one question for the people that aren't using fragments. Tablet layouts. How do you do the tablet layout components, or we use like like having a list and an array or something?
They just don't use them.
Well, I provided like two different layouts. For example, one for the landscape and one for not landscape, and then I just like fetch if this UID exists. I just use it and then populate it. If it's not used, then it's okay.
I have some comments back.
Yeah, we basically do the same as Klemen said. So we try to do everything with layout, custom view groups. So that works for us.
Well, maybe I have some comment about that. For example, when you want to implement, for example, MVP on that pattern, for example, you have custom view groups. You don't get that specific callbacks, and it's gonna get tricky to save the state. I mean, you could use the views. I think it has on-save state, but that's one thing that I find kind of icky. Because if you use fragments, for example, you could easily translate it to MVP, but if you use custom view groups, and saving state and all that stuff can become a bit messy. I mean, it can be done, but okay, that's one of the drawbacks.
While we are at fragments, what do you say that is the worst UI component in Android?
The worst UI component. Well, we had a lot of problems with surprisingly with listed.
Yeah.
So we tried to, when recyclable was available, even in its most earliest form, I remember it was some sort of release candidate, not even officially out, and there was some documentation on some Chinese website or something like that. So we really tried to migrate as soon as possible. So I know it's looks pretty straightforward, but once we have an app where we have to support like remote control, and that was Andraž can back me up on this. That was really annoying with Listo for some weird reasons. So yeah, I'm glad that's over with.
So you were happy when they announced recycling?
Yeah, very happy. And also for the horizontal recycling, because there wasn't really a proper solution before that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was really awesome.
Andraž, what's your worst UI component?
Yeah, ListView was really bad, but now it's gone. We have RecycleView. My current worst UI component is WebView. Yeah, it's really heavy component, but I don't know, clients want them because it's easier to update the content when the app is already on the market. Yeah, it's slow. It got better with 4.4
Yeah.
when it's because it's Chromium based, and even better from Lollipop. Because it's constantly updating through Play Market. But yeah, you have also the exceptions. If the user opens your app and the web view is updating, it will crash. So for example, like those exceptions you need to catch. Yeah.
Jernej.
I think by far it's the surface view. It's this great thing that's actually a view, but not really. And to make it even better, it has its own life cycle, where essentially it's going to, when you instantiate it, it's going to make a callback when its surface is ready. And if you do anything before that to it, it's going to hard crash some things that aren't really yours and are part of operating system, and you don't want that. So essentially, it's like Google looked at all the life cycles and like, oh, let's add another one to make everything easier. So if you try to put that into, for example, a view pager inside a fragment, it's a great way to lose your mind and everything else. Right behind it's probably going to be WebView, but I kind of just don't use it ever, so that's fine. And yeah, just do it pretty fast.
What do you use instead of WebView when you have to?
I don't.
Just don't.
Just go away with the web stuff. It's pretty fine.
Okay, Klemen.
Okay, so I think I have worst experience with video view. I think it's really stupid, and I think that the media player doesn't have state, so you have to like handle it all with a bunch of variables, what state is in it. So I found it like really, I had the most problems with it because we had to play a video and then okay, it's video view, let's do that, but it's really horrible. So like I was really excited about this XPLR thing. I've used it a lot on other projects, and it really like helps with all this statement and stuff. I have one comment about the list view and recyclable. It's really interesting because I listened to a podcast about like the guys that built recyclable. They were discussing, and they like said, yeah, if you want to have footers and headers, maybe it's still a good idea to have list views, because recyclable is meant to like handle animations and stuff, so it's built for if you want to animate stuff.
Yeah.
But if you use list view and you want to have a footer, then you should use list view. It's like, okay.
Okay.
Just one more comment. After listening to all of my colleagues' experience, it really brings back some bad memories of both web views and service views. And also, also the media player API, so thanks for that.
Okay, so for next question, what do you use for networking? Do you use OKHTTP with combination retrofit or something else?
Yeah, we use retrofit 2 with OKHTTP 3, and we use the RE Java code adapters. So basically we try to expose all of the network hosts as not as observables anymore, but as symbols. So that's basically an observable that can only emit a single value, and that's it. So that's what we're doing currently.
Okay, nice.
Same here, so nothing to add.
Yeah, I have to be a special one. We use curl, but that's just because we actually do our networking in C++.
Yeah.
But for everyone who's not completely crazy, retrofit is just so good. It's just no reason not to use it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's retrofit as well.
Okay. Did anyone from you had some problems with migrating from retrofit 1 to retrofit 2, or from OKHTTP 2 to 3?
Well, we had a multi-part upload, and there was a thing that I think it was still a bug, so multi-part didn't load. I think some of the headers or some of the parameters was missing. So I think we made a pull request or did a patch to do it. So that was the only problem.
So they got accepted. It's fixed now.
Not sure. I think then they already fixed it,
Yeah.
or we did the internal fix. Not sure, but yeah, that's the only problem we had.
Okay, nice. How do you handle multi-threading? Do you use async tests, RxJava, or something else?
Well, because our stack is so involved with RxJava, we just use that. So we use schedulers from RxJava and also from RxAndroid for the main thread. And basically, we haven't used async tests in years, or even loaders or stuff like that. So we try to keep everything as reactive as possible.
Okay. Raj?
Same here, like Java or intent services if it's longer.
Okay.
Yeah, same as well. We use RxJava, we wrote our own schedulers that basically can handle priorities and stuff, and once you have that, it's just so much easier to track what's going on as in comparison to using anything else.
Yeah, I've used RxJava in my previous projects. At the moment, I think when I do RxJava, it's like really not that much multi-threading, so yeah.
So moving from networking to offline mode, what do you use for caching your data? Do you use databases, preferences, disk storages, stuff like that?
Okay, so if data has to be saved persistently and there's not a lot of it and there's practically no querying involved, we just stick to shared preferences. But if there's more data, we would have to move to a database solution. And we also have some disk caching systems. But most of our apps are really online mode variants, so there's not a lot of caching to be done. It's just if some data needs to be saved persistently on the device forever, then we just stick with shared preferences.
Okay.
So in our apps, there's no need to really persist the data. If it is, we are using shared preferences. It has been a while since we used anything more advanced like database. The last time it was ORM Lite, which was now already forgotten.
Yeah.
Then we are also using response cache on OKHTTP.
So yeah, we have some customers which are pretty demanding about security. So that's why we actually ship SQLite, our own build, which can be replaced with something called SQL Cypher, which is basically a fork of SQLite free database that provides on-the-fly encryption.
Yeah.
And this is where we store most of the stuff, with the exception of like cached bitmaps and stuff like that. And for that, we actually use disk coloring cache, which is a small library, which is either included in the OS or in the OS itself, or there's a fork by Jake Wharton. It's a great library. You just say, it's like, I want this cache to be 50 megabytes, and you just throw in data in raw streams and bring it out, and it just magically works. And the other part was, there's also a great library by Jake Wharton. It's called Tape. It's really nice. It essentially just persists pieces of data and then you can reload them. And the use case for that is, for example, when you want to upload something to the server, what you do is you store it into the tape, and then you fire up a service that reads from that tape and tries to basically commit these things.
Yep.
So that way you don't get that shitty experience where you try to, I don't know, send a tweet or send anything, and you don't have the internet connection, it fails, and you lose everything. So instead we use tape, and you just basically read out of it and commit it to server, and if its server is not available, you just do this, how it's called, basically you retry it with increasing periods. The new job scheduler API is great for that, and there's even a node library by Evernote that brings job scheduler back all the way to 4.0.
Yeah.
And yeah, those are the things we use for actually to persist all the data.
So yeah, it depends on the use case. In the current project, we use sharp references and we have a database. In some previous projects, like Jernej said, we use like FallQ, the Square State implementation. Besides that, yeah, also dist LRU cache. So those 4 solutions.
Do you have some experience with NoSQL databases like Realm or Couchbase or something like that?
Yeah, so on our last work projects we tried Realm. Just basically we wanted to see what all the fuss was about. So we tried that, but I think it's gonna stay the last project we tried it in. I mean, there's been a huge update now, but it still adds a lot of additional kilobytes to your APK because it has to ship all the different platform versions with the app itself. So yeah, we have used it, but it has some problems specifically with threading, and RX wasn't really evolved back then when we tried it first. So we tried it, but yeah, we tried to move somewhere else.
I only know REM. I didn't actually try it, but just read through the documentations. It's really fast evolving because of their big founding behind them, but there's still some limitations that turn me away. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we looked into a few things. Most of them were pretty mature or built for Android. And the issue is just like SQLite you have already, like, is really fast, especially if you're using it as a key value store like all other databases. So there wasn't much of a reason. I like Realm because it's really fast. But one of the biggest limitations it has is you're not allowed to touch its objects of the thread you retrieve them.
Yeah.
Which means, for example, if you want to show data in a list view and retrieve it from a background thread, it's not possible, or you need to wrap it. So that was just such an annoying thing. And their solution was, well, access the database on the main thread, and then you look at them and go, no, and you just move on, and rather use a really good wrapper for SQLite.
Yeah.
Yeah, right now we use Realm, but since app is still in development, hopefully I managed to like maybe switch. We are still testing it, so we'll see how it goes.
Okay. Next question. Do you write tests? Which frameworks do you use? Do you use just unit tests, information tests, do you use Electric?
Okay, yeah. So we try to write as much tests as possible. So we basically write unit tests which run either on the JVM itself or on the emulator. So we either use JUnit or Android JUnit runners, and we also use Mockito to help us mount objects. But we don't use Robolectric. We just try to write Android JUnit tests. And we have recently started doing the the Espresso UI test as well.
We don't write a lot of tests. Unit tests are only for the core business logic, for the stuff that can easily break and is hard to detect. And we use also instrumental tests like Espresso for also use cases where it's hard to test, like if you have the list, you load more to scroll through the bottom and so on.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a long story. Okay, so the C++ part, the core part we share between platforms, uses Google G-tests, which is like JUnit for C++, and they're run separately on our CI server, just like a binary.
on our CS server, like plainly on Linux. Then we run it on Windows, and we run them on Android Genie motion emulators as well. And of course Mac and iOS. Then for Android, we have instrumentation tests with Espresso. This is the bulk of Android stuff, which essentially tests all the user interface, orientation changes, stuff like that. We have some unit tests we use for the things that aren't UI related as well. And then it's also on iOS, there's also the UI tests on Android. On iOS, which actually use screenshotting and stuff to actually compare if everything's still on the place. So the thing is, the main core logic is actually tested on all 4 platforms we support, and all the tests always run across all platforms, which finds incredible amount of bugs and things where platforms don't really implement specifications as they should.
Okay, so yeah, we write unit tests and UI tests, both of them.
Have you tried test-driven development? You'll have some experience with that.
Well, we have tried test-driven development on like small functions or managers where you know in advance. It's easiest to test like static methods where you put in like 2 parameters and expect 1 parameter. But otherwise, I can't say we do TDD. We write code first and then we cover the tests. So if we ever have to refactor, we at least have a bit of security to know, okay, we have refactored this correctly. So that has saved us a couple of times recently. So.
Same here. Never actually tried. We have tried it on the SDK, where you know in advance what you will do, but not on all of the stuff.
I don't think anyone writes tests before implementation by us, but the guys that do the core stuff, the actual C++ stuff, actually need to, because they don't write the iOS or Android logic. They actually need to implement stuff and write tests for it, figure out if it's working, and then it's hand off to Android and iOS teams, which actually do the UI part. So you may call it TDD, but usually I think mostly everyone writes implementation first and then covers it with full test coverage.
Yeah, we're gonna do TDD, but when I'm implementing stuff, I try to think how I'm gonna write tests about it. So maybe then when you're implementing, you put it in a bit different way. When you have I'm gonna have to test this, so you need to think about that. So that's that kind of process.
For some new stuff, I know that Klemen, you use Kotlin language.
Yeah.
For you guys, do you maybe use it? Do you have some opinion about it? Do you think that it's the next big thing in Android development?
Okay, so I recently had a talk about it. I'm really excited about it. At the current project, we don't use it, but I use it in my previous projects, and I found it it has really a lot of useful stuff that can really speed up the development. Also, for example, I just checked this Anko library, which can really you avoid the burden of writing XMLs. Layouts in XML. So yeah, I'm really excited about it.
So we actually started introducing Kotlin to our code base like a month ago. For now, only in tests, but that's just because it also adds a standard library dependency, which we don't want to push to our users yet. Honestly, personally, I've tried it out quite a bit, and it's if I would be starting a project now, I'd start using it, writing it in pure Kotlin. If I would be writing a project that's an app, I would immediately start using Kotlin now, because it's not really different from Java, so it doesn't do stupid shit like Scala or other languages. It's just this great cleaned up version of Java that just seamlessly plugs into everything. And at this point, I haven't really found any big issues with either the IDE or the compilers or anything. It's just magically worked. So honestly, at this point, I don't see the reason why not using it. It's just so much more pleasant to develop for Android again. Maybe the only downside I've noticed was Linter doesn't really work on it yet. So you use that part,
but other than that, it's just, you just look at code and go, oh my god, this is half of the code I should have written, and I understand what's going on, and it's not annoying to write. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
We have tried it on a small prototype project. We are not using it on our main projects. I don't know, we are maybe still waiting for Google confirmation if they are going with it or no. And also, it's hard to find people knowing Kotlin or give them 2 weeks to learn it. So.
Yeah, we still haven't used any Kotlin code in production yet. I am very eager to try it though, because it has really some nice features about it. Specifically, I really want to get extensions back, because after working as a C# developer, that's something you really miss when you go to Java. And otherwise, no, we haven't really taken an extensive look into it, but I think it's very promising. But we're still kind of waiting for Google's answer with Java, because they are doing some interesting work in regards to the Jack compiler and stuff like that. So that would be very interesting. So we're still waiting a bit for the dust to clear a bit, to be honest.
So do you think that someday Google will actually announce that they are fully supporting Kotlin and that you should move from Java to it?
I don't think that is very likely. I think it's going to be a similar situation as with, for example, RxJava. There's going to be a lot of community support for it, and at some point we're just going to weigh the pros and cons, and we're going to say, okay, yeah, let's use RxJava, or in this case, yeah, let's use Kotlin. I don't think there's going to be like an officially supported version anytime soon.
Honestly, I don't know, but I hope they will support Kotlin, like the main language.
Okay.
Yeah, with the guys from Google I've seen, they don't even think they know Kotlin existed. I'm not showing much hope, especially since it took them so long to actually do something about Java 8, which honestly I think Google is so much Java-centric company, they don't even care much. So at this point, I think it's just community is going to grab it. Especially since all they're flailing around with Java 8 support, and at this point Java 8 is 2 or 3 steps behind Kotlin.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the whole scene is like either you Google kind and develop, or you community type. I mean, Google introduces something and community has some alternatives, so I'm not really sure. It's like loaders, interloaders. I don't know, a lot of people use loaders. And then you have MVP, and they introduce some Google repository where they have samples of MVP, and like if you check the community on Reddit, this is like, yeah, it's grab examples, so it's really like, community does its stuff, and then Google just wants to pursue the other stuff, so I'm not really sure they're gonna like go for Kotlin.
Okay. I think that we'll need to wrap it up a little. So my final question for you guys is, if you take a look at new features, APIs, which were announced with Android N, like multi-window support, Android apps can now be executed and stored in Chromebooks. So what's your opinion? What will become of Android in like a few years? Do you think that it will migrate to other platforms, to like on desktop, on computers, on cars, and stuff like that?
Yeah, I think it's going to be everywhere. I mean, you can see already that it's like in the cars, in the TVs, in the computers. The only downside I see still is like fragmentation, so you get a lot. I mean, I'm using like the latest preview of N, and it's awesome. I mean, if everybody would use this kind of Android, not those crappy Samsungs or stuff, I mean, there's like, it's really awesome. But you have these limitations of providers and everything, so it's kind of not everyone gets the same experience that Android is currently giving. So that's one of the things I'm really like, see as a limitation, and I really miss it. So yeah, that's my opinion.
Yeah, I'm actually pretty excited for N. It's again a release I'm pretty happy about, because multi-video is my favorite feature on a tablet. It's just, I can finally watch a YouTube video and chat at once. So that's pretty awesome. Supporting that was really easy. So the next step is probably getting it on the desktop as some kind of window manager, like floating windows, I guess, is going to be the next thing that's going to be supported on Android. They're also pushing them, yeah. It's going to run on cars now and watches, so, but I think they need to first address the whole update situation, which is still the most, not as much only just the Android versions, which I think it's gotten easier due to decoupling, because right now like recycle view, constraint layout, stuff like that, it's now not a part of the platform anymore, which is awesome, because we don't need to wait for Samsung to update their crap to actually use it. But it's actually a huge problem for the users, because right now you have things like stage fright out there, which I can just own your phone on remotely, and there's literally thousands of phones that have never been updated, and that's right now it's pretty much criminal just how slow those updates are. And unless Google addresses it, it's going to really lose against Apple, who actually cares about security. And Android added a lot of security stuff as well, right? We now have full encryption support. We actually have a hardware key store now. So I can actually generate a key which people can extract with root, and I can properly secure data. But it's an app. And if something is going to mess it up again by not including a kernel module like they already did, it's an issue. So unless Google gets OEMs under control, we're still going to have a huge problem. This is the big downside. And right now, Google just announced official dates for how long Nexus devices are going to be supported, and it's 2 years, which is about half as much as Apple does. Which is like, even if Google can support their friggin' Nexus 4 with like Android N, it's ridiculous, right?
Yes, same opinion. I'm excited about N and Chromium support, so I hope we will see more cheap laptops with huge market effects. Fragmentation is a big problem. Different devices give different experience. A lot of people are disappointed about Android when using some devices. I think there were rumors that Android N will lock the core for OEMs, but I think they were just rumors. I hope they did that.
Yeah, I also think that Google will move Android to a lot of different devices in the future. But I agree with my panelists, the biggest problem as of now is fragmentation. I mean, I don't know how much we can do about that, because OEMs are the ones who are actually making the devices, and they're responsible for updates, and they just, after they release a new flagship, they just don't seem to care about the previous one. So I think there was an article about Google trying to have a statistic of how long do OEMs take to update their flagships, and that might help a bit, but otherwise they can't really do much outside of that.
Another interesting thing is Google started to really put a lot of things into their developer tools. They have really started improving, and if anyone actually seen how constraint layout works, it's just incredible. It's not the view itself, but it's the tool they build it. So essentially just constraint layout is a new view that's essentially meant to be used only via Android Studio, not written XML. So it just works like you take a view, you throw it to the left side, and it just automatically says, oh look, this has to be pinned to left and up. And you just pull it again, another view at the center, and just says, this has to be the center. And the developer experience is so much easier for UI when you're using constraint layout before anything else. So these things are significantly improving. Like constraint layout right now is probably better even with Xcode's interface builder. It's really, really good. On the other hand, the Gradle plugin development is just so amateurish and so broken. Those guys really need to start writing unit tests.
Okay. We have some other comments.
Anyone from the...
Do we have some questions?
Yeah.
How often do you have to rewrite your tests, unit tests?
Honestly, not all that much, but mostly because we don't rewrite our part of the code a lot. Usually when we refactor a piece of code, then those tests go well. But surprisingly, not a lot. It's usually more adding tests than rewriting them, which is surprising to me. Yeah, I would agree. We don't really refactor tests all that much. Once you have some functionality and you write tests for that, and then that helps you immensely when you're trying to refactor. But usually, just like my colleague said, you usually just add additional tests, or maybe if you like delete a whole feature, then obviously you're going to delete the tests as well, but we don't usually change them all that much.
Do we have some other questions?
What about VR? Are you preparing yourself somehow?
No, we don't see a use for that. For me, honestly, it's like VR on the phones is a bit not all that interesting. I'm betting my money on HTC Vive and the actual, high-end machines, because I think they provide cheap VR just isn't a good experience. The expensive VR is the one where it really makes a difference against anything else.
Don't you see like a marketing potential for it? Because it has such a wide reach.
Yeah. Personally, the biggest problem here is that VR is really easy with hardware, and Android really wasn't all that good if you want to write high-end 3D graphics and things because Play Store won't let you limit your application to high-end phones. You don't have a really good stable OpenGL implementation or drivers. So every time we tried doing something high-end 3D with it, it was extremely painful. So this is why I'm not excited, because it's like, yeah, we could probably do a great marketing thing, but it's going to have 2 stars on the Play Store because it's going to run like crap on anything that's not 5 high-end devices, and we're not going to be able to filter it. This is my concern.
That's why now they introduced the Meetup, right?
Yeah. I'll hold off for that. I'm not convinced that Google's capable of doing that well.
Some other comments, questions?
Are you interested in any other IoT things using Android?
I think Bluetooth is really interesting, and there's a really nice library for BLE, so you can use it. It's completely in RX, and I had a really good experience with it. So, yeah.
For me, it has more like, I have this love-hate relationship with IoT. I would really love to take, smart home a bit further, in a way that it had to be smart, in terms of like, I leave home, my heating system knows I'm not home and doesn't keep my living room at 5 degrees. And this part is pretty cool. And Apple has HomeKit. Google tried to do something as well with their home assistant. But the modern IoT as it stands right now pretty much means really crappy, unsecure implementations that upload all your data to some Chinese servers. So honestly, it's really hard for me to be excited about IoT, not because of the possibilities, but of just how bad all of those things really are. It's like, you have people doing Bluetooth locks that use HTTP to unlock your front door. This is the current state of innovation. So I would love to have IoT. It's like Bluetooth beacons would be great, but Bluetooth BLE doesn't work on Android well. It's just such a low quality thing.
Okay.
What was the most interesting bug or like the most memorable bug you've encountered in your Android career so
far? Yeah, quite a lot. It's like, maybe it's like from Hofer adding a shadow and glow effect to all their fonts on all their devices. It's Samsung shipping their own support library that collides with your own and causes crashes, to having video view refused to play some videos only on Verizon Samsung Galaxy S3s, which is great because you can't really buy that phone, and then you order it from America, and then they ship it to you, and you open it, and you turn it on, and the phone goes, well, now you need to call this number to activate me, so I'm going to boot, which is great because the closest CDMA network that thing uses is 3,000 kilometers away. Luckily, they had a bug in their setup wizard experience, so if you press the button fast enough, it would crash, and the normal startup wizard would run and let you basically boot the phone. What else? It's just so many things. And we haven't even gotten to the graphics drivers yet. Maybe later after beer.
So I think that we need to finish. Thank you guys for participating in this open panel. Thank you all guys for coming. I hope that this was interesting, fun, that you learned something new. With this we are concluding our season of Android meetups. Next meetup will be probably in September. So now we are going on the summer break. We need to fix all of those Samsung crashes and bugs. We have organized a picnic, so please stay. Let's drink something, we have some food, let's chat, let's talk more about bugs and stupid things from Android world, and that's everything.
And day 3 need to get the
you will get the good bags. Okay, so thank you all.